You ever notice how quiet it gets right before everything changes? Like the whole world's holding its breath, waiting, not for your plan, not for your perfect little vision board, no, for something else, something older, bigger, louder than thunder, but whispering like guilt. And when it speaks, oh, it doesn't care if you're ready. It doesn't wait for your schedule. It just drops the truth on you like a bomb in a room full of lies. They always want the truth to be polite, soft-spoken, dressed in white robes with golden light behind it, saying, "Hey there, champ, here's your destiny." But truth? Real truth? Oh no, it doesn't arrive with flowers. It kicks the damn door in. It laughs while your little fairy tales bleed out on the floor. 'Cause truth doesn't care about how nice your story sounds. It only cares about what's real. You spend your whole life building this pretty little lie, brick by brick, who you are, who they think you are, what you're supposed to want, what success looks like. You wear it like armor, like it's gonna save you from the emptiness crawling up your spine at 2 a.m. But the truth, it doesn't knock, it rips right through the things you thought were safe. The job, the title, the mask, the relationship you swore was love but felt more like a deal. And that's where the fun begins. Because when it hits, when the truth finally decides you've heard enough of your own lies, it doesn't whisper, it screams. But not with sound, with silence. With that sudden stillness that makes your skin itch. With that gut feeling that something's wrong and it's not out there, it's in here. That's the moment you realize the truth has always been following you, just waiting for you to run out of places to hide. But most people, they fight it. They cling to the illusion like it's oxygen. 'Cause illusions are easy. They're beautiful. They give you certainty even if it's fake. The truth, it asks you to bleed. It says, you want to grow? Cool. Let's rip this version of you apart first. And that's what they don't teach in your little motivational seminars, that becoming more means losing first. That clarity always comes with a cost. You ever seen someone get the truth too fast? It shatters them because they weren't ready to see how fake everything was. Their smile, their faith, their reasons for waking up, all of it built on sand. And when the flood comes, and it will come, what's built on lies gets swept away. That's the truth's job. It doesn't destroy what's real, only what's pretending. But people don't want that. They want truth that agrees with them, truth that keeps them comfortable, truth that lets them stay small, stay liked, stay safe. And when it doesn't, oh, they label it cruel. They call it unfair. But maybe the truth isn't cruel. Maybe it's just clear. And maybe it's not unfair. It's uninterested in your feelings. Because your feelings lie. The truth, and once it's spoken, once it's heard, it can't be unspoken. You can try. You can distract yourself, scroll till your fingers bleed, drink till your brain fogs, but it's there, under the noise, waiting, watching, growing louder in the silence because truth doesn't fade, it waits. And when you're tired of running, it's still there, tapping its foot, saying, "Ready now?" You want to know why it feels heavy? Because it is. The truth comes with weight, with responsibility. Because once you see it, you don't get to say, "I didn't know." Now you do. Now it's your move. And that's why most people pretend they didn't hear it. Because knowing means choosing. But underneath that chaos, underneath that panic, something cracks open. Something old. Something raw. And if you're brave enough, no, if you're desperate enough to sit in it, to let the illusion die without reaching to save it, then the truth starts to show you what was always true underneath the noise. Not the story they sold you, not the role you were trained to play, but you, the version of you that doesn't need a script, the one that's been waiting, buried under years of pretending to be fine. And here's the twist. The truth doesn't show up to ruin your life. It shows up to hand you the pen, to say, "You done with the lies? Good. Now let's write something that doesn't need to be fake to survive." They always ask for a sign, a voice, a miracle. Something loud enough to silence their doubt, but quiet enough not to shake their little world too much. Funny thing is, when the message does hit, when it lands like thunder in their bones, the first thing they do, they flinch. They freeze. They run. Because nobody really wants the truth when it walks in dressed like Demolition. They want it soft. Sweet. Preferably with a refund policy. The message doesn't knock politely. It shows up uninvited, flips the table and points at everything you've been ignoring. It doesn't come to whisper affirmations or stroke your ego, no. It comes with smoke on its breath and says, "You already know." That's the worst part. Deep down you've always known, but knowing means you can't play dumb anymore. And once you know, you can't go back to sleep. See, they paint this picture of divine guidance like it's going to feel warm, like it's going to hug you into your purpose. But when it hits, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like exposure, like standing naked under a spotlight while every version of who you pretended to be melts off your skin. And there's no applause, just silence. Just your own heartbeat reminding you this is the real you, the raw one, the one that doesn't get filtered for approval. Do you ever get a truth so sharp it makes you sick? That's what happens when the message hits. It slices through your comfort like it's paper. It drags you into the mirror and forces you to look, not at who you tell the world you are, at the parts you buried, the compromises you swallowed, the dreams you postponed until the right time, which somehow never came. It reminds you that every excuse was a decision in disguise. But here's the real joke. They ask for purpose, for meaning, for clarity. But when the answer finally slams into them, they call it unfair. Why now? Why me? Like the universe is supposed to wait for their schedule to open up. Like they're entitled to convenience even in their awakening. The message doesn't care about timing. It shows up when you've run out of distractions, when the noise dies down just enough for you to hear what's been screaming beneath the surface. The first instinct? Denial. Of course, because denial is soft. Denial lets you keep pretending the cage is a castle. But the message doesn't leave, it lingers, it haunts. You'll try to drown it in habits, people, plans, but it's not going anywhere. It's been spoken, and now everything fake has an expiration date. You'll try to shrink it, to repackage it into something manageable, something that doesn't require you to actually change. You'll say things like, maybe later, or let me just finish this one thing first. But the truth isn't patient. It's not a suggestion. It's a command dressed like chaos. And once you've heard it, your silence becomes complicity. Your comfort becomes your cage. They think clarity is supposed to come gently, but real clarity is violent. It ruins what doesn't belong. It sets fire to the parts of you that were built to be liked, not lived. And when the smoke clears, you're left standing in the ruins of who you used to be, holding a truth that doesn't care if you're ready. It's easier to call it crazy, to say that can't be real, because if it is, then everything changes. Your plans, your identity, your little checklist life. The message doesn't just ask you to change course, it asks you to burn the map. It asks you to let go of the version of you that could live without it. But people are addicted to maybe. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's just a phase. They keep pushing the truth into the corner like it's a guest they can ignore. But truth isn't a guest. It's a force, a storm. And it doesn't wait for you to feel brave. It comes when you're broken enough to finally listen. And when you do, when you really hear it, it doesn't sound like a preacher or a prophet. It sounds like a whisper from your own soul saying, "You already know what this is. Now stop pretending you don't." They always want to bargain, don't they? Like they're standing in front of something eternal and saying, okay, but can we tweak the terms a bit? You don't get to negotiate with what's already been spoken. Not when the message is carved into your bones. Not when it's echoing in the spaces you try so hard to keep silent. People hear that voice, that pull, and their first move is to argue, to ask for a delay, as if purpose is a subscription they can pause until life feels more convenient. See, the truth doesn't come with a debate stage. It's not a suggestion. It doesn't show up saying, "Would you like to do this?" No. It shows up like a sentence already passed, like the gavel's dropped and your name's on the paper. But instead of stepping into it, what do most people do? They build walls. They start negotiating with ghosts. Maybe this isn't the right time, they say. Maybe I need a sign after this vacation, or once the kids are older, or when the fear finally goes away. As if fear has ever packed its bags and walked away. What they don't get is that knowing is its own kind of prison. Once the truth is in, you're trapped. You can't unhear the calling. You can't unfeel the itch. And every step away from it, that's not safety. That's suffocation. You ever seen someone try to live a life they've already outgrown? It's tragic. They smile, they nod, they play along, but behind their eyes, there's fire. That's the weight of ignoring what's already been spoken. But here's the beautiful, twisted part. Truth doesn't flinch. It doesn't shrink when you doubt it. It doesn't vanish when you try to run. It just waits. And the longer you delay, the louder it gets. It bleeds into your dreams. It warps your comfort. It turns your routine into a slow, aching rot. Because you were never meant to negotiate with what's sacred. You were meant to obey it. That word, obey, it makes people squirm. They want autonomy, they want choice, but when something holy grabs your throat and says, "This is who you are," what's left to choose? You think you're free. No. You're just walking in circles around a fire that's already lit. Every time you say, "Not yet," the flame grows. Every time you push it down, it punches back harder. You don't get to be neutral once you've been called. You're either moving toward it, or you're decaying trying to avoid it. And the worst part? The world applauds your delay. It calls it responsible, practical. They say, take your time, play it safe, make sure you're ready, as if readiness is ever guaranteed, as if purpose waits politely in the corner while you get your life in order. No! Purpose is a riot. It kicks the door down and says, now. And the longer you resist, the more you bleed internally, not from failure, but from avoidance. You start to feel it physically, the fatigue, the dullness, the way your laugh feels like it's echoing in the wrong room. That's what it feels like to carry a truth you won't walk in. That's what it feels like to say, I hear it, and then pretend you don't. You don't need more time. You don't need more signs. You need to stop pretending the fire isn't real. And maybe that's the game. Maybe life was never about making the perfect choice, but making the honest one. Maybe it's not about waiting until you're ready, but moving even while you're terrified. Because the voice, it didn't ask if you were fearless, it asked if you were listening. And once you've heard it, trying to negotiate is just another way of saying, I'd rather rot than rise. You want to know how to tell when someone's heard the truth and is running from it? Look for the exhaustion. Look for the bitterness. Look for the way they talk about dreams like they're myths. That's not peace. That's the slow death of someone who thought they could make a deal with destiny. But truth doesn't make deals. It gives ultimatums dressed as moments of clarity. It says, here it is. Do what you want. But understand, from this moment forward, every breath you take pretending you didn't hear me is a breath stolen from the life you were actually meant to live. Oh, purpose doesn't show up wearing a suit, shaking your hand, laying out a 5-year plan. No, it crashes through your window at 3 a.m., barefoot and bleeding, wild-eyed and whispering, now. It doesn't wait for your budget to balance or your confidence to grow. It doesn't care if you've had your morning coffee or if the timing is aligned with your goals. Purpose shows up like a scream inside a whisper, like lightning disguised as a flickering bulb. It shows up messy, inconvenient, demanding. It doesn't knock, it takes. Do you think you're supposed to be ready? That there's some perfect version of you waiting just beyond the next self-help book or affirmation loop? No. The truth is, you're never ready. You're not supposed to be. Readiness is a fantasy sold to people addicted to postponing their lives. They think they need to feel ready before they act, but purpose doesn't care about your feelings. It's not interested in your comfort zone. It thrives in discomfort, in chaos, in the places where your lies start to fall apart. And it's funny because most people spend their whole lives trying to be safe. They avoid risk, they build routines, they find someone who doesn't challenge them too much, a job that pays just enough, and a dream that's small enough to fold into a drawer. And still they wonder why they feel hollow. Why every laugh feels like a mask. Why even in moments of success, there's this emptiness, gnawing from the inside. That's what it feels like when you ignore the call. That's what it feels like to betray the one thing that's actually yours. You see them sometimes, the ones who gave up. They move slow. They smile with their teeth, not their eyes. They talk like their sentences are recycled, because they are. They're playing a character they didn't write. They're living a life they didn't choose. And the scariest part, they don't even realize it. Because over time, the silence of ignored purpose becomes normal. It becomes comfortable. And comfort, my friend, is the killer in a velvet suit. It rocks you to sleep while your soul screams into a pillow. But every now and then, purpose comes back. Like a ghost, it creeps into your commute, your shower, your long stares out the window. It says, "Remember me?" And for a moment you do. For a moment the fire returns, your spine straightens, your eyes sharpen, but then the fear rushes in. The voice that says, "It's too late," or "You're not good enough," or "What if you fail?" And just like that, you go back to pretending you didn't hear it. Back to scrolling. Back to surviving. What they don't tell you is that purpose is rude. It doesn't care about your trauma. It doesn't ask how many times you've been hurt. It doesn't offer insurance or guarantees. It just says, "Follow me," and it walks fast. And you either run after it with your lungs on fire, or you stand still and watch it disappear. That's the choice. That's the moment. Not some grand epiphany, not a choir of angels, just a small, brutal invitation. Act now or die slow. And you want to know something truly funny? The world doesn't need more people who wait until they're ready. It doesn't need more perfect plans or polished pitches. It needs people who are willing to look ridiculous, who are willing to fall flat on their face in front of everyone, who are willing to begin even if they don't know how it ends. Because the ones who wait until everything makes sense, they never start. They rot in the waiting room. Purpose isn't polite. It doesn't arrive with permission slips. It won't wait until your fear goes away. It won't lower its standards to match your doubt. It will keep calling louder until the noise becomes unbearable, until you either leap or you collapse under the weight of everything you did. And when you finally move, when you say screw it and jump into the unknown with nothing but shaky hands and a pounding heart, you realize something wild. You were never supposed to feel ready. You were supposed to feel called. And maybe that's the difference between the ones who live and the ones who exist. Not that they had more talent or time, but that they heard the same voice and didn't wait for an invitation to follow it. The funny thing about truth is it doesn't need your approval, doesn't care if you like it, doesn't wait for you to clap. It just is. And once it shows its face, it changes everything. Not because it does something dramatic, not right away, but because it unmasks you. Rips off the costume you've been wearing since you were old enough to lie. And that's the catch, isn't it? Everyone's pretending. Everyone's playing a role. Nice, responsible, normal. But behind all that, you're shaking. You're screaming into the void. Because deep down you know you're not living the life that was meant for you. They told you to fit in, told you to follow the script, go to school, get the job, smile when you're supposed to, keep your head down, and maybe you'll be happy. But nobody tells you that the script was written by people who gave up. People who traded their fire for a quiet, forgettable existence. And now here you are, reciting lines you never wrote, wondering why the applause feels hollow, why the stage feels like a cave. It's because it is. And truth, well, truth doesn't let you stay locked up forever. You hear it in the silence, that whisper that doesn't go away, that pull in your chest when you see someone really living, not surviving, not performing, living. And it burns, doesn't it? That ache, that tightness behind your ribs when you know you've been shrinking just to make other people comfortable. When you realize the version of you that the world accepts isn't the real one. It's a costume made of compromise. And baby, it's getting heavy. People think transformation is about adding something, more confidence, more knowledge, more success. But the real trick, it's about removing, stripping, burning away everything that isn't truly yours. And you can't do that until the truth sets fire to the lies you've built your identity around. The truth doesn't come in peace. It comes to destroy, to dismantle, to deconstruct. And if you're lucky, if you're really lucky, it'll do it while you're still breathing, still young enough to fight back. But that's the problem, isn't it? Nobody wants to be broken. They want the breakthrough without the breakdown. They want to evolve without the mess. But evolution is messy. It's violent. You don't get to become something new without killing something old. And most people, they're too scared to hold the knife. So they settle. They settle for being liked instead of being real. They settle for applause instead of alignment. And then they wonder why they hate the person in the mirror. Truth makes you dangerous, not because it turns you into a monster, but because it makes you free. And nothing scares this world more than someone who can't be controlled. Someone who doesn't flinch when approval is taken away. Someone who walks away from everything safe just because it's fake. You do that, you become a threat. Because now you're unpredictable. Now you're alive. Now you've got nothing to lose and everything to find. You ever notice how people look at you different when you stop pretending like you're unstable, like you're off script? That's because you are, and that terrifies them. People aren't afraid of you failing, they're afraid of you changing. Because if you change, they have to ask why they haven't. And that's a question most people aren't ready to face. So they'll mock you, try to guilt you, shame you, anything to make you sit back down. But once the truth's been spoken inside you, you can't go back to pretending. You can try. Oh, you can try. But it'll eat you alive from the inside. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the pain of not being real has to become worse than the fear of being exposed. Maybe that's the only way people wake up. When the mask gets too heavy. When the smile starts to crack. When the life they've built becomes a prison with golden bars. Then, and only then, do they consider the cost of truth worth paying. But by then, they've already lost so much time, so much self. Truth doesn't shout, it waits, patient, cold, watching you dance around it like a coward at a funeral, until one day, It corners you, forces you to admit that you've been playing small, hiding, performing. You either fall apart or rise up. That's the deal. And nobody tells you how loud the silence gets when you finally stop lying to yourself. How much space opens up when you stop pretending to be fine. That's when you hear it clearly. That's when the truth, raw and unfiltered, says, now, let's begin.